Thanks, Murray. Morning, everybody. Hope you're well. For those who aren't aware, ICAEW is the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. We are a membership organisation and professional body for about 200,000 chartered accountants, business and finance professionals. At any point in time, we have somewhere in the region of 30,000 students who are undertaking our ACA qualification. That is a rigorous training and exam scheme, the end of which they gain their ACA designation and become a chartered accountant, which is a bit of a passport for some of the greatest jobs that you can get in the finance space. We also serve in a public interest. So part of our charter status means that we need to work with regulators, government bodies to set accounting standards. And for our members, we offer a huge suite of content support, lifelong learning, and continuous professional development for our members. And our journey with AI started around about 5 years ago. And it was about this time when the impact of AI and the effect that it might have on professions and jobs really started to hit mainstream media headlines. And accountancy was a profession that occasionally would get singled out as being at higher risk than others in terms of the effect that that might have. And we have a thought leadership team in the organisation who did a fantastic publication, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Accountancy at that time, which went into great depth about what those problems might be and how accountants can react and work towards that. Alongside that, what we decided to do was publish our first chatbot. So rather than consumers needing to get at the content just through a report in a normal way, we actually decided to experiment with IBM Watson and see, well, could we create a chatbot alongside that allowed the consumers to get into greater depth into the report or take a step back and maybe just get a bit of a summary, because these reports are quite long and extensive. And I'm advised actually that just in the last couple of days we've got an update to that on our website to sort of look a little bit more at generative AI if anyone's interested in searching for that. So that started us on our road to success. We deployed that first chatbot using IBM Watson, as I say, about 5-6 years ago. And the foundation and the good feedback that we had from that allowed us to have conversations between the technology teams and between our customer service department to talk about, well, how do we scale this up? How would we productionize something that is for our customer services team? And so a business case project went into flow, and around about a year later, we launched MIA. And MIA is ICAEW's first customer inquiry chatbot, but we did make a shift from, at that point, from IBM Watson to Google Dialogflow. Fast forward to where we are today, and MIA now handles about 27% of all of our inbound inquiries, and that's against channels such as email, telephone, and live chat. Very, very importantly for us, 40% of those conversations are held outside of our UK-based operating hours, which are typically 9 to 5:30. The reason that's very important is that despite ICAEW's name, we are an international organisation. We have a good proportion of members and students who study in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, operating on a completely different time zone to us here in the UK. So one of the key objectives at that time, and will remain a very key objective for us moving forward, is to be able to offer our members and students a self-service facility when people are not available on the phones, on live chat, or able to answer emails. Despite those positives, MIA has always had quite volatile customer experience scores. There is some reflection of the seasonal and cyclical nature of our work and that of our members and students that contributes to that, but fundamentally that is a KPI that we want to stabilise and improve. MIA at the moment, if I just run you through how it's created, is really quite manual in its operation. So we have an operations team at ICAEW who have got to create from nothing hundreds and hundreds of intents. So in this, I mean that we address the common problems, the common frequently asked questions that come into our customer services team, and we've got some really skilled experts in that area now who are able to sort of map the query to the actual intent, the problem they were trying to resolve, and the response that we would give to them. That is quite an intensive effort, and that really, from an artificial intelligence point of view, it doesn't really go too much further than a bit of machine learning in addressing where those responses have not been understood by MIA and the platform and the technology underneath it, and to map what the correct response therefore should have been. From a user experience perspective as well, it's tree-based taxonomy. It's very mechanical in nature, and there's some screenshots that you'll be able to see in a minute that really do demonstrate that. So for us, it really just fulfills a business capability, but doesn't do a fantastic job or meet our ambitions and what we want to do from a UX point of view. So, to summarize that, the pain points that we've already know about are that slow and limited hierarchical experience. It does feel like you're therefore talking to a machine. Very little context is retained throughout the conversation, whilst we are able to pull in information from our CRM. That doesn't persist as long as we would like to within a conversation. And because of that human capacity restriction, because of its manual operation, we're only able to answer a very small subset of the questions that come in or that we'd really like to be able to answer. Therefore, a significant proportion do have to fall back to the call center through other inquiry channels such as email, phone, and web chat. On the internal operational side, there's a lot of heavy lifting in building that hierarchical navigational experience. It's a click-based experience where you're presented with options and you have to click and click and click and go again. A lot of copying and pasting work that's sometimes quite tedious, slightly demoralizing, I dare say, for the operational team. And there is a time-consuming nature to it. Every morning, the team will have to go back and look at the conversations from the day before and look at those that were misunderstood, that were maybe incorrectly answered, and they have to go through them one by one and map what the correct intent should have been and therefore the correct response given. The human resources problems that we've got mean that we can't sufficiently extend the intent. It's always going to be more limited than we'd like it to be. And without large investment, we can't really address that, nor can we address an improvement in the customer experience and the personalization we'd like to offer. And then we have that watershed moment last year where OpenAI released ChatGPT, and in February, Microsoft decided to go all in their investment towards generative AI. And at ICAEW, we found ourselves as sort of technology teams and as senior leadership as well, thinking to ourselves, are we going to embrace this? Are we going to adopt this? Or do we take a position at this point in time to stand by the sidelines a little bit and see how it would affect us? Basically, do we want to affect it or do we want to be affected by it? And this is where we started to involve Murray and the team at ASCENT. So we started to run some conversations around, okay, well, what could the benefits of this be? So I'm here today talking to you about improved customer experience. I think really a part of that in the conversations we were having is the faster access to information and insight. Primarily, that is content and information that members would otherwise be able to get from our website. Are there opportunities around what we could do in our business model? At this point in time, we've decided that's not an avenue we want to explore. Could we be quicker getting to market in response to our members and students? I think that touches back to the improved customer experience again. And finally, productivity gains, somewhat an internal measure, an internal focus. Like the business model opportunities, we decided not to really address that at this point in time. However, subsequent announcements by Microsoft around Copilot and the tools that they're building, I think will give us some of the opportunities there that we thought we would see. So on this slide, I'm just going to quickly run through how we work with ASCENT to workshop, identify and prioritize the use cases that we really thought, based on those benefits, we could address. I'm going to start from the bottom, working up really, because I think the bottom one is important. A learning assistant for our students and members who are studying courses or going for our qualifications with us seemed like a bit of an obvious starting point. Impact of that really could be quite high, but for ICAEW in particular, the complexity and risk involved in that is high, if not very high. And a lot of that is down to the really strong relationships and partnerships we have with our training providers and tuition providers who will actually deliver a lot of that learning on behalf of ICAEW, working with the employers through which our students are going or undertaking their work experience whilst doing the ACA qualification. So those would typically be the big four accountancy firms and many, many other businesses underneath that as well. So for us, we decided everything along that scale was quite high, and we would put that as the lowest priority for now. A sort of spin-off of that was this idea of a training material system, where we've got a lot of good content training material for those who are undertaking our courses, but not through a tuition provider. So similar sort of concept to the one below, but the impact of that we decided was at best going to be medium, probably low, so that was also deprioritized. Allowed us to really concentrate just on the AI chatbots, the top two. So enhancing MIA, so a lot of success, as I demonstrated earlier, on good KPIs that allowed us a strong foundation with senior leadership and with our board to say, okay, we've already got something that has demonstrated its success and its value and purpose for several years. generative AI now gives us a great opportunity to improve on that customer experience that we want to do so. And then the idea of maybe spinning that off for a particular function that we call our technical advisory service. And technical advisory service is a very high value interaction that our members can have with specialized qualified individuals within that within that customer service team. They typically will speak to our members on a one-to-one basis over many hours, talking about and addressing issues that they might be having in their work. But the guidance and direction that they can give is often content and information that they can just get from our website. That's our members. But that would involve them trawling through a huge amount of content that we have on the site, navigating, searching, and as we know from our other CX feedback that we get, that is also a problem. So the idea of maybe interrogating that content is a great opportunity, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on. For that prioritization, we looked at our value statements, one for each for student members and our leadership team. We considered how we would go about proving and demonstrating return on investment, how we quantify that improvement in CX, which I'll touch on in a minute, the potential redeployment of that operational team to something of greater value or higher value in another area or on other projects. How would we actually go about creating this? So we thought we'd focus on, initially, a bank of 25,000 web documents on our website. Quite a large portion of that is again, content that they could already get at, but when you introduce that, you start to introduce the risk of illusions, hallucinations, and false information being provided. And that's a great risk for ICAEW because we have to be very accurate in the information we provide. Some of the services that we deliver and that we support our members with are in regulated areas, so it is a high risk for us. Murray should have an opportunity to run through how we use grounding and prompt engineering to mitigate those risks. And at ICAEW, as I'm sure is the case in a lot of your organizations, there is a fear of AI as well. So culturally, we've worked on a few initiatives to try and across the organization, in a cross-collaborative, cross-functional way, bring people together who have got inputs, who could be inspired by AI, but also might be fearful of the impact on our profession, their roles, the roles of our members, and what that might mean. So some really interesting initiatives that we've done to try and educate and demonstrate the value. I'm not going to touch too much on the technology behind this. I'll leave that to Murray to do in a minute. But over the last few weeks, ASCENT have been working with us to enhance MIA, completely re-architect it in a way that is now purely based on generative AI and ChatGPT as its LLM. We've moved from a mechanical, transactional chatbot to something that's purely conversational and delivers a much richer experience. The key benefits of that are really sort of the opposite of the pain points we saw earlier. So we have gone from a hierarchical chatbot to something where you can now ask it pretty much absolutely anything. Within reason, of course, and there are boundaries that we've put in place, or ASCENT are helping us put in place around that. That Ask Me Anything interaction leads to much deeper engagement throughout that conversation. It's a much longer conversation that's taking place, and therefore it allows the conversation to be far more personalized and tailored to that individual as well, removing that generic interaction that MIA currently has. From a user's point of view, we remove that cognitive burden that you get when you've got to make selections and choices, and I think, as you'll see in a second, that mechanical flow of needing to make an option and make a choice means that there's quite a lot of, well, what if I'd chosen that route? Would I have got a different answer, or can I go back? And that was always a problem for us, and that's now removed. And over time, we'd like to see a smoother transition from this into our call center for where conversations and inquiries cannot be fully resolved. Internally, for the operational team, we've moved from something where there's quite a lot of involvement to zero-touch involvement with the chatbot now. Their efforts can be spent on refining the customer experience, and there's also an exciting opportunity for people in our team to be skilled on prompt engineering and the value to them and to the organization that brings. Where appropriate, we can also free up their time to work on other initiatives and other projects. So here's MIA as it currently stands. There's taken 3 screenshots, but you should be able to see the mechanical nature of it. So it is a selection of options, and you've got to click on one of those. And whilst these screenshots don't demonstrate it, I can assure you there are many layers of that underneath, and it probably takes you 5 to 6 clicks to get to your response. What I've tried to represent on the right-hand side here is if I just typed in a typical question our contact center gets, the response is inadequate at best, let's be honest. So we've worked with ASCENT to deliver something completely different. Now I appreciate the words on here are going to be very difficult for anyone to see. You don't need to be able to read it all. But the user interface fundamentally different, and I will say at this point, this is an experimental interface. This is not how we would intend to go into production. Mimics quite heavily what ChatGPT looks like for everyone that's used that. But on the left-hand side, I've asked the very same question I had asked Mia on the screen before, and you can see the richness of information that comes back compared with that terrible one-line response on the last screenshot. It's followed up again with that context where I've prompted it to just ask me a little bit more information. By the end of that second interaction, I've got the full response I'd ever need, along with complementary information as well. On the right-hand side, I've taken a very different approach and started to look at how we can interrogate ICAEW's content in other sources. So less a customer services bot, but now something that might be able to completely change the way our members and students interact and engage with us on our website. So here I've demonstrated a case where an accountant may have been with us, or a member may have been with us working with an organization, let's say a large firm for 10 years, has decided, I now want to step out and I want to create my own practice. But I don't know the steps, the pitfalls, or the regulatory and compliance that I'd have to go through to do that. How can ICAEW guide me in this? And it's synthesized information from 25,000 documents in a couple of seconds to derive 7 steps that member would initially need to follow. The screenshot doesn't show this, but like on the left-hand side, with extra prompts underneath that, the conversation gets richer and richer and granular, and it's a really, really fantastic evolution compared to where we currently are. So at this point, I'm going to leave you before handing back to Murray on how we're going about measuring this success. And I will remind you at this point, we only are in an experimental mode. This is not something that's live for our member students or the general public, or unfortunately yourselves, to play with. Our objective at this point is how do we present to our senior leadership and our board a narrative that says that this is working and it's worth you making a decision that we put this live. From a conversational point of view, we've got 4 very clear measures: relevancy, accuracy, clarity, and tone. Those together, we're confident, combine for a really strong conversational experience. And from a UX point of view, we're going to cover off the customer satisfaction scores and the number of inquiries that are already successfully handled. We can compare those really easily to MIA as it currently stands. We can also compare both of those benchmarks against other inquiry channels that the contact center use. But the last 2 are really interesting. The third one is that ability to interrogate our data, as I demonstrated on that last slide. That is a really, really strong selling point for us in this technology moving forward. And finally, the channel availability on other platforms, aside from our website where MIA is also, where MIA is only currently available, is a really, really strong opportunity for us to widen the experience and make it available to more people in more countries for more of the time. And on that, I'll hand back to Murray to talk a little bit more about the technology and how we've done that.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. So I think we've just got roughly 10 or so odd minutes left, and I'll talk you through a little bit of what happens behind the scenes. So whenever we start working with customers like ICAEW on OpenAI, or any generative AI use case, we kind of look at these 4 key elements, and without them, success is very difficult to achieve. So obviously you need a use case, and Adam's done a great job of talking us through their business case and how that fits together, and the benefits in customer experience that can actually be translated back down to figures and numbers that can go into a board pack and presentation. But without a strong business case, it's more of an experiment than an actual piece of value. You obviously need to be able to bring your data to the party. So the large language models, I'm sure you've heard it all over the show, have been trained on data up until mid-2021. And moving on from that, it doesn't really understand anything new that's been published on the internet, and it doesn't understand anything that sits within your organization, within your corporate boundary. We are a Microsoft partner, so we use Microsoft's OpenAI service, and that gives us a whole lot of benefit because it kind of sits firmly in that Microsoft ecosystem, comes with all the trust and assurance. I think recently, a couple of days ago, Microsoft released an announcement on copyright. Organizations were concerned around being litigated by the content produced being infringing on copyright. And Microsoft's taken on the burden of that and said that they'll cover any expenses relating to that type of litigation. So Microsoft's really given us a solid foundation And then we need to surface it somewhere. I don't know if you saw a couple of slides ago that there's different ways of surfacing generative AI, whether it's a co-pilot or a chatbot, or embedding it into an application, or sitting it next to an application to interact with it. So without those four things, you're not going to get too far. The team we've had with ICAEW, so obviously there's two routes that we need to explore with them. One is up through the business to make sure that there's a solid use case, and there's the backing to do the project, and the other is from the technology side to make sure that the technology we build fits and embeds into the organization and sits with their governance and compliance, rules and regulations for how they like vendors to operate. We have a delivery consultant and a solution architect, one person to keep the project on track, the solution architect there to make sure we tick all the non-functional boxes, security, reliability, governance, compliance, the responsible AI. If you look at things like fairness, openness, transparency, etc. And then we have a data scientist trained in OpenAI and generative AI, a prompt engineer, someone that's really good at understanding how to get the best out of the generative AI model. It's gone from being a very programmatic coding type of data science to something that you use natural language to actually inform and try and shape that chatbot to behave in the way you want it. And then a developer to build the user interface to surface that chatbot. Behind the scenes, in terms of technology, we're a Microsoft partner, but I've made it sort of agnostic for everyone. The real meat and potatoes in the middle is a vector database, and that's something that takes text-based data and transforms it into arrays of numbers. And that's the best thing for an OpenAI large language model to interact with, to understand the context and provide it back. And there's kind of two parts to it. If you break it up into the chatbot on the left and the grounding piece on the right, we go through ICAEW's website and we scrape all that. We go through those 22,000 PDF documents. We bring all that through a PDF extractor, so we actually convert those PDFs into text documents, and then we chunk them up into relevant paragraphs, and we feed them into this engine, into this vector database where we store that information. We kind of do that daily on an incremental basis just to keep all the data up to date, and we spoke about zero-touch maintenance. This piece on the right is taking care of that for us. And then on the left we have a chatbot, very simple web application, sat behind a firewall for security reasons, and then we have a database, a little SQL database sitting to the side where we keep a conversation history, moderation, and a scoring system, a feedback scoring system, so that after an interaction is complete, we can get a score and we can go back and compare that from a customer experience perspective to what they currently have on their website. And then all the interaction backwards and forwards through content filtering to OpenAI. So the OpenAI large language module, providing that intelligence around how to converse and interact with the end user on the other side. And then the content filter, if you haven't heard of content filtering before, anything that's malicious or sensitive, political, etc., it's another layer of defense to make sure that the chatbot doesn't respond with content that is inappropriate. And both the questions coming in and the answers coming out, we filter both of those to ensure that the content is above board. And at the bottom, obviously, left off the diagram for brevity is audit, configurability, security, observability, everything that you need to run an enterprise system. So this little piece up here is that vector database, search optimized content, and this is how the conversation really flows. And we use OpenAI on the way in and on the way out. So we take a question and we frame that, however that comes from the end user, and we then give that to OpenAI, and we use OpenAI to extract the keywords. So just the salient points of it. And we take those keywords and then we push them against this large corpus of search optimized data, and it brings back 6, 7, 10 relevant paragraphs of information. And then we take that information, we pass it back into the top of the chatbot, and then we use OpenAI to ask the question again. So we go back to the original question and say, based on all this information that we know that we've pulled out of this knowledge base on ICAEW's documentation and website, ask this question, but take into consideration all this information that we've given to you. and that provides that first interaction and the first answer. And then it goes back to the beginning where a second question is posed. We then take that same route, extract the keywords, go and get context, add that onto all the previous context, and then pass it back into the large language model with the original question to answer that question. And so on and so forth, and so it kind of filters down and through till finally the answer is realized. We find that it takes sort of 2 or 3 interactions if you know what you're looking for, and also if you're kind of looking for an experience, or the end user is looking for an experience where they're trying to explore and find out different elements and aspects of what the organization has to offer, it's really good at answering those questions and providing those journeys as was shown in the demos. Just a quick blurb. Us at ASCENT, we work with customers like ICAEW in sort of 5 or 6 different methods, all the way from a 2-hour immersion core. We just hop on free with the customer, talk them through some of the stuff I've shown you there, a bit more detail, help them understand and get a feel for what large language models can do. Maybe listen a bit and hear what you're trying to do and see if there's a route there we can help you solve those type of problems. All the way through design workshops, so we go through design-led thinking, looking at a large variety of options and use cases that might be applicable to your business, helping to prioritize them, helping to understand and produce that business case that's going to get the technology brought into the organization, through to 10-day prototypes where we just put together some, glue the technology together to prove that it works, and that's kind of where we start with ICAEW, and then into full projects. It's a little bit about ASCENT. I think we're really low on time. A couple of minutes. So if there's any questions, I think we'll take 1 or 2 questions if there's time.